Welcome back to the Metro on WDET, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. In Southwest Detroit, it's a vibrant community that oftentimes get overlooked as a Detroit neighborhood. Yet many residents are native Detroiters or have deep roots in the city. And similar to other neighborhoods in Detroit, people living there may feel unseen or forgotten. Recently, the Vera and Joseph Dresner Foundation opened the Dresner Community Center, Gilbert Street in Southwest. And the goal is to expand resources while trying to directly connect with the communities they serve.
That's right, Tia. The neighborhood hub will act as a space for multiple nonprofits to live within the community. Joining us now to talk more about the Dresner Community Center, Gilbert Street, is Virginia Romano. Virginia is Dresner Foundation Chief Executive Officer. Virginia, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you.
So who were Vera and Joseph Dresner, and what was their mission for Metro Detroit?
So Vera and Joseph Dresner lived in Detroit for many years and in the region. Mr. Dresner was actually a developer, and he and his wife supported the community at large as well. And so for us to, purchase these buildings and renovate them and have them used for the purpose they're being used seems to be a natural extension of what, Mr. Dresner's and his wife's passions were.
Now, the Dresner Community Center, Gilbert Street, is the newest addition to Southwest Detroit. The foundation bought two properties, the St. Andre Catholic Church and Rectory and the community building on Gilbert Street. Talk about the community center and the importance of refurbishing existing spaces in the neighborhood.
Again, when we, thought about how we could go beyond traditional philanthropy, we started to look for other opportunities, and we thought this would be a great opportunity. We looked for properties in Detroit, found these two spaces, completely renovated the building. It's beautiful. We also furnished it, did all the infrastructure that was needed, and in return, we have opened it up for nonprofits to use, and the foundation is taking care of all the cost associated with it so that these nonprofits can focus on delivering services to the community.
You're listening to the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. We're speaking with Virginia Romano, Dresner Foundation Chief Executive Officer, and we're learning a little bit more about the Dresner Community Center, Gilbert Street. Now, Virginia, you talked just a little bit now. It's going to be a hub for multiple nonprofits to survive in and live in. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of having multiple spaces like this or multiple entities living within Southwest Detroit?
Sure, because the continuum of services that will be delivered by the different nonprofits cover a spectrum of youth and adult programming. We have an anchor agency there currently at the center, which will be providing essential services such as helping individuals and families navigate the system, provide them with help accessing water, utility assistance, tax and property assistance, and as well, they will serve as a navigator, so connecting them to other resources that they may need within the community center, but beyond it as well.
And you talk about the non-traditional aspect of what you're doing. Could you explain a little bit for folks what traditionally would be the role of a foundation of your size, especially within a community? What would normally happen?
What would normally happen and what we continue to do in addition to this is provide nonprofit organizations with grant funding. So nonprofits would approach us with a request. Typically what we fund is programming, so we would support their programming. And in this way, we're supporting both. The ability to have a space, a hub for them to provide the services, as well as taking care of the other costs they experience when they're delivering services.
Which a lot of folks we don't think about those additional costs that go into running nonprofits and the things that they have to do, especially on the ground, physically out there in the community. It costs a lot. But you were just talking a little bit once again about the grants, and that's normally what you would see. It's like, okay, these are really great grants that are going down. I saw that you had one with the Ypsilanti Library, which was really, really cool programming there. But talk about how opening a community center kind of expands and I guess double downs on the grant making or grant giving.
Yeah, I mean, it gives these nonprofits the opportunity to provide services, to expand services potentially outside of where they might typically be providing them. So it brings them into a community. And essentially, not all they do, but what they focus on is providing the services and not worry about, for instance, if the elevator doesn't work. It just gives them the ability to focus on that and not to have to worry. So it expands services.
Yeah. And in particular, we were talking about Southwest Detroit. I know you've helped other communities, but Southwest, we all know, the largest Latino population within Detroit. It's a Detroit neighborhood that we often may not even think of as a Detroit neighborhood, but it is a Detroit neighborhood through and through. Can you talk about the unique resources that are needed in Southwest Detroit and how you all were able to cultivate them for that community?
It's a vibrant community, and yet has a number of needs. And so what we did, we bought the buildings pre-pandemic. But then a year or so before we even started work on the building, we engaged in a community engagement process. And we had a number of organizations, nonprofit organizations, residents, the church across the street, and some other individuals in the community. And we went through a pretty extensive year-long community engagement, and they identified what the services were. Which
is really, really, once again, something that you're starting to see more built into the foundation model when they're reaching communities or speaking to communities, when they're going into communities. What are things that you actually need versus what do we think you actually need? And that's something that we often get to when we talk about nonprofits. There's a really rich tapestry of nonprofits throughout the city of Detroit, and all of them have really passionate people working for them. And there are individual experience that help shape those organizations. Who brought you into nonprofit work in the first place, especially in the city of Detroit?
Who brought me into nonprofit work?
Yeah, how did you get into nonprofit work?
It's what I've been doing my entire professional career.
Yeah.
And I worked at nonprofits for a very long time. And then when I moved to this region, I had a wonderful opportunity to work at a foundation and make a significant impact in a different way.
Yeah. And when we think about making those different impacts in different ways, we see that our community, especially within the city of Detroit, the communities are going to be highly impacted by federal restructuring we see happening right now. So could you talk a little bit about the importance of community groups like the Dresner Community Foundation, and talk a little bit about why you all have to now act as, if you have to act as this almost a middleman between some of the things that we're seeing, the gaps, filling in gaps?
Well, I think our focus is to provide an opportunity for youth, families, individuals in their communities to get the help and access to the resources that they need, and that is our goal. Our goal is to have these nonprofits embedded in the communities, and if someone's walking down the street and sees Dresner Community Center, Gilbert Street, and they can access services immediately and have accessibility.
And, thinking about nonprofit work in general and the concerns that you were saying that the folks in the community brought up, and they told you the things that they were interested in happening within the Dresner Community Center, Gilbert Street. In what ways do you see this being, I guess you can say, a start for growth within Southwest, especially in that particular area?
Well, it's a vibrant area, and we just, we were fortunate to happen upon these two properties. One is our headquarters, and this is the community center. We just, we want to be embedded. We want to be in the community, working together with our nonprofit partners and the community residents to make, things happen, and help support the community as well.
And before we do let you go, there is, I'm thinking about just for those who are listening or interested, or nonprofits or any person who's interested who would benefit from the funds that you all provide to communities and resources that you all provide. What should they know about signing up or possibly getting a grant through you all?
So the grant process, is independent of the community center, Dresner Community Center process for nonprofits. We've already identified the nonprofits that will provide services through an RFP that we did, request for proposals. So we know who they are. We're just beginning to have them come and set up business. The other process is the grant-making process for organizations that are interested in speaking with us is all done through our website. If they go to their website, they'll see all the information they need about how to apply, who's eligible. Everything is right on the website. So organizations typically go through the website.
And before we let you go, what would you say about just all the work that's gone on, especially pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, post-pandemic, and where we are now when you finally are opening up and starting to see folks coming to the building? What do you hope to see within the community now that it's open?
Lots of community engagement, lots of people coming and getting, lots of individuals, youth, and families getting the support and the resources they need is the bottom line for us, and having some place that is accessible.
Yes, accessibility. Virginia Romano is Dresner Foundation Chief Executive Officer. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you.
It's the Metro on WDET. We've got a lot of great conversations coming up this week. Tomorrow, we'll talk about veterans returning to civilian life. Do they have enough support, especially in the face of federal cuts? And Detroit has a rich transit history. Imagine streetcars rolling down Woodward and Michigan Avenue. So what happened, and what's the future of transit in Detroit? Up next, you can't learn if you aren't in school. We'll stay on education and return to the topic of chronic absenteeism in Detroit and the U.S. This is WDET, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.